Like I always say that limitations and boundaries will fuel creativity.
Friends, family, followers, welcome. You're listening to Doc This 24 and 12, where we're interviewing 24 amazing artists, filmmakers, content creators, and bringing the best of those interviews to you. Today I have a special treat. I got to speak with the director of I Am Comic, I Am Road Comic, and now being screened in Detroit in the Main Art Theater on April 5th, I Am Battle Comic.
I openly mock the lack of weapons of mass destruction that were never ever found. When my children back in the day were little, we marched against the war. Okay, so I'm like, am I a hypocrite for even doing this?
His name is Jordan Brady, and I have to tell you, his new film and his perspective on the men and women serving our country is refreshing.
Meeting the individual men and women that volunteered to serve our country and protect freedom. That's what got me. It's like, this isn't conscription. There's no draft. They said, I will basically suspend my liberties to fight for liberty.
The highlight in the interview for me was when we dug into the whys of his work.
Maybe the deeper, and I've explored this same why question in these documentaries dealing with comedians, and maybe the real answer is we all want to feel connected.
I want you to listen into where Jordan taps into the key for his why in doing comedy. I am challenging you to think about what's the why for your work. Leave a comment and listen in my final words for more insight into why it's important for you to know.
Let's kind of open this up. Maybe do me the favor of giving me a little history about how you got to where you are today.
Well, Barry, my name is Jordan Brady. I'm a father first and foremost, and I'm a filmmaker. And I use the term filmmaker because I make a living directing commercials, national spots. It's a great living. It's a lot of fun. You work with incredibly talented, creative people. So it's quite a collaborative art form. And it's art that serves commerce. So I never lose sight of that. And I'm a documentary filmmaker, which in my case is it's really less collaborative because I'm kind of a one-man band when I go out and do these documentaries. I just did my third one on stand-up comedy to complete this trilogy of the I Am comic movies. And I got to where I am because I was a comedian. And I traveled around the world. Well, really, North America. Who am I kidding? I went to Europe once. But I traveled around the United States to every state except Maine, performing for money in clubs and bars and such. And that got me to L.A. and got me into television, working as a comedian / bad actor, sometimes game show host, which seems like a weird path, right? But then I fell in love behind the camera as I was working on productions. So I started shifting I did these kids shows on NBC, and they were little magazine-style pieces, reality pieces. They were loosely scripted, and I started producing so I could direct, and I would sit in the edit bay, and just slowly but surely I gravitated behind the camera, and I love it.
I love it. I mean, I hear the two big pieces of your life, and I love that you put kind of it's art for commerce when you talk about working for clients. It's a great way to put it in the sense that I work with a lot of directors and artists who forget that.
How can you? I mean, if you keep that at the forefront of your mind, it actually frees you. Like I always say that limitations and boundaries will fuel creativity. So if we know that we have an intent to market a product, sell a product, get more hits, whatever the ad agency and the client have determined is the mission of the spot. That is something you can take off the table. That's not going to change. So you can actually focus your creativity more laser-like on the mission.
What were the two that you said? Limitations and fuel creativity.
Limitations and boundaries. Yeah, like if you don't have, on the technical side, Barry, if you don't have enough money to get a big techno crane, well, by golly, you're going to go, hey, maybe I'll stand on top of the cube truck that we rented to bring the props in. Or I'll get up on the neighbor's roof. And at the end of the day, that's a great shot. That's pretty much the same as if you had the crane.
So boundaries and limitations, you're coming to Detroit. Talk to me a little. I'm curious to know boundaries and limitations of traveling over to war zones to do comedy and shoot comedy.
Wow, that's a great entry into it. Okay, so just a little bit of context for your listeners. If you go on iTunes, I know one of them's on Netflix and Hulu. In 2010, I came out with I Am Comic because I was a comedian, and different ad agency people I'd work with would be like, "What was that like being a comedian?" Or, "Look, here's you on YouTube with, long hair and a lime green suit from the 90s. And so I just, after answering that question so many times, I thought, it'd probably make a pretty interesting documentary. So I Am Comic was the result of that. And everyone from Roseanne Barr, Sarah Silverman, Jeff Foxworthy, Carrot Top, Tim Allen, Leslie Jones, who was unknown at the time, now on SNL, all a star-studded documentary. Then I went to a small club, what we call a hell gig, and I did comedy and documented the weekend as a road comic in the sequel, I Am Road Comic. So then a year ago, a guy I've known for a long time, a comedian, says, "Hey, why don't you come to Afghanistan and film us doing jokes?" And I said, "Okay, that would be great. That would be," they call themselves the Battle Comics. So it'll be I Am Battle Comic. It'll be a new documentary. He goes, "But there's one catch. For you to go and get government clearance and for us to give you, the flights and everything, you have to do stand-up comedy. You have to open the show. Like, they won't just pay for a guy to film us. They have the part of the budget from the Department of Defense that sends these people over." I haven't done it, and I did it for a weekend as a goof for the movie I Am Road Comic, but now I've got to actually entertain an audience who's sober and carrying weapons. By the way, I Am Battle Comic is about performing stand-up comedy for troops in the Middle East. And it's analogous to performing all around the world. So it's from a comedian's point of view. And one of the comics has a great line. He says, "We're like water boys to the Super Bowl team. We're on the field, but we're not doing anything. We're just there to support." And the movie shows that great tradition from Bob Hope and Robin Williams, giving a relief, taking them back home for a couple hours through the form of stories and comedy joke bits, and let them forget their troubles for a few hours, and then it's back to that daily grind. So that's the mission of the film. So the first thing I had to do was like, okay, I got to start writing some jokes. And I went up a couple of times under the radar, didn't tell friends, just told my wife, didn't bring her with me, just did some jokes, just so I had I was back on stage. But the limitations were, I traveled out of a backpack. So I bought a camera at Best Buy for $800. So the equipment, keeping it small into literally a tiny photographer's backpack, was the first limitation that fueled my creativity.
You and I are in the same boat in that stuff. And I did a doc in India in the Himalayas and this was 6 years ago now, when DSLRs were just coming on the market, and I think a lot of people thought I was crazy. But when you're in these crunch situations where mobility and efficiency are a big part of what you're doing, being able to drop off and get down to the nuts and bolts of what you really need to just cover it. I love hearing about that.
Well, it's funny. It's funny. I looked at a Canon C100 that a lot of documentarians use, and I thought about changing lenses and making this more of a cinematic piece. And then I realized, now I got to carry lenses. And then, like in Bahrain, the military bases were not run by our government, and some of the Kuwaiti bases too. I was patted down and frisked, and I luckily had a chaperone that said, "Oh, he's filming the movie," but I never brought the camera out during some of those entrances onto bases, even our U.S. bases. I did not film things that I thought might be sensitive. I'll give you a great example. Another restriction that I think made my film better. The government cleared the film. I showed them cuts to make sure I wasn't showing missile codes or something in the background inadvertently. And the Department of Defense said, you can't show the bases, you can't name them where you are, because other entertainers fly over there. And we don't want it out there in the world like the route you guys take, and I respect that, right? So instead of putting the name of the base, I just put undisclosed airstrip, Kuwait. And it adds a layer of suspense to the movie. Like, it makes it feel like it's covert. So someone telling me no turned into a much better element to the film.
What I'm extremely curious about is as you take this trip and you're covering your friends and their experiences, and you're meeting these troops and you're seeing this stuff firsthand, I mean, there's two big things that I'm curious about. One, what are the emotional and kind of personal, I don't know if they're challenges, if they're just things that you go through while you're there, and then what's your perspective once you come back?
Wow, that is a wonderful question. And I can tell you on the way over, my inner conflict was I openly mock the lack of weapons of mass destruction that were never ever found. When my children back in the day were little, we marched against the war, that there should be no war. There was that, I was mad as hell as anyone was at 9/11, but it just didn't seem to add up to going into Iraq, right? Mm. So as a guy against the war, how am I going to go over there and entertain people that are fighting that what is basically a continuation of that decision? Okay, so I'm like, am I a hypocrite for even doing this? And I know that I can't really make it a political movie. And the other comedians who have done this for decades says, you don't make fun of the president. You don't make fun of, you don't make your political jokes about oil and what's this war about. You want to give escapism. So that I was okay with, like how I would handle the stand-up after 22 years not performing. That was actually the least of my worries. It was, how am I going to be sincere about what I'm there to do? And that is to entertain the troops and to tell this story with an apolitical point of view. And as you know, the documentary, you can go in with any thesis you want, but that story is going to have to unfold before you. You can't force what's in your head to come out on film. I mean, that to me is the jazz-like quality of documentary filmmaking. So my inner conflict was one thing. And then I get there, and it took less than a half a day of meeting the troops. And even the word troops doesn't work. Meeting the individual men and women that volunteered to serve our country and protect freedom. And I'm a huge fan of America. It's one of the reasons I'm coming to Detroit, because I picked an American city where I have a lot of friends who are supportive of the military. And once you meet these kids, and some of them are our age in the commanders circles, but the rank and file men and women are my son's age, are kids, college age kids that work for me on set, and they have volunteered. That's what got me. It's like, this isn't conscription. There's no draft. They said, I will basically suspend my liberties to fight for liberty. And that's where the story of I Am Battle Comic, that's where it gelled for me, was in these meet and greets. And then after the shows, you would give autographs and take pictures. And I'm like, I'm a nobody, right? I'm a no-name guy. I'm just joining these guys. And even they aren't household names. But the fact that we came over there and remembered them, what really stuck with the soldiers and the sailors and the airmen and the Marines. Does that kind of answer your question?
That's awesome. No, that totally does. I'm engrossed in this answer. I'm feeling the transformation at some level, and I get where you're coming from with the conflict, but I feel like I see what you're saying is you started to see the individuals, which kind of superseded the overarching conflict for you, and became maybe more of the story.
You're right. It was transformational in that instead of me cynically talking with someone about, let's hear it for the troops. Like you can almost, we hear that so much. But now I think of that guy in that hut who was from Kennewick, Washington, and laughing with us. Like they become faces. And that's what Tammy says in her interview featured in the movie, that she goes to comedy clubs and people come to her shows forever now. It's almost like country music fans are loyal to the people, the artists that they love. And the military, when you've done for them, it's like you're joining. There's an esprit de corps. Like, you came over there for me, I'm going to come see you at the Comedy Castle when I'm back home in Detroit.
I got a cousin who's an awesome, currently serving. He's been in for 15 years for the Marines, and I'm proud of that guy. He's good. I served in the U.S. Army myself, and so it's cool to hear that, and I know I can relate to what you're saying. Last two questions. I want to ask you, what drives you, and this is kind of more general to you as a person, to your character, to who you are as a director. What drives you to do this work?
Oh, easy. Making people laugh. I love to get a good laugh, whether it's, in person, shaking hands, whether it's in a meeting that gets tense, whether it's on set and humor can diffuse. You've been on set where clients get anxious and producers are wondering what's going to happen. And if you can stay in control and making someone laugh is a form of keeping control of a room, it's just a wonderful feeling. And then to do it on film and you sit in a theater and watch people watch your work, and they laugh at the place you hope they would laugh, that's a great feeling.
Digging a little deeper in that, because I love the whys. I got this thing I call the 7 whys, and I don't think I'll go as far as 7, but I like to dig down into the whys, and I say, why is it important to? And you mentioned control of a room. Why is that important? Why is it important to make people laugh for you?
It sounds like I'm evading the question, but I think it's my calling. Like, some people were born. My wife just did a series of films for a healthcare outfit, and she interviewed these people who they said it was their calling to help these elderly people that are their clients. And I was like, wow, I don't get that, but I get the level of commitment that they have to what they feel they were chosen to do.
How would you feel? Would you feel comfortable if I dug one more why and I said, why do you feel it's your calling?
That's another great question, Barry. You're good at this.
I love to know what's going on inside of people. I love hearing these things.
I don't know why. I had a great childhood in Mount Vernon, Ohio, in a small town. I was, my family was good. I'm a happy person. A lot of stand-up comedians are twisted and have problems, and that's not me. I mean, that's one of the reasons I like a daytime job as opposed to nightclubs and bars. But I like seeing people happy. When someone laughs, when a room full of people laugh, there's a palpable feeling of like a wave that comes at you. It's infectious.
There you go. That's awesome.
It's love. It's love, actually. I mean, there's, a sneeze is you can't control, and a laugh you can't control, but you can manipulate someone into a laugh. You can't make them sneeze.
I get the calling part, because I definitely feel I have my callings in life, and I totally get that, and I get the reward for kind of the love and the reward for appreciation and having kind of people. It almost seems like a reflection of love. You kind of put something of yourself out there, and when you get that laugh, it's kind of like they got it.
Yeah, you connect. You connect with people.
Connection. So that's it.
Maybe the deeper, and I've explored this same why question in these documentaries dealing with comedians, and maybe the real answer is we all want to feel connected. So when you can make someone laugh, you're feeling connected, like, oh, I connected with you because I said something. You got that little when you tell a joke, there's a setup and then there's the punchline. The punchline is within plausible reach of the premise of the joke. So if you connect the dots, that's when you laugh. Like, oh, I get he did a twist there. I didn't see that coming, but now I get it. You connect. It's wordplay and it's timing. And when someone laughs, they're saying, I'm with you. I'm right there with you. I get that. Yeah.
I like that. Last one. Years from now, you're kind of coming to the gates, the pearly gates per se, or whatever it may be for you. Something, if you had one thing, only one thing, can't leave more than one thing you could leave to your family, your friends, to your children, what would that be from this work or from your life or whatever?
It's going to sound weird, but I think it would be this film, I Am Battle Comic. It's my most personal film. So there are times almost like, Morgan Spurlock with Super Size Me, or Michael Moore in his early films when he's talking to camera. You can tell they put themselves in it. And the other two, I really was watching other comedians. In this one, there's a heavy dose of myself, like alone in a hotel room, reflecting on where I was at the moment. And this was shot a year ago today. I was somewhere, parts unknown, in the Middle East. And the day we traveled to Afghanistan, we had woken up in a hotel in Kuwait learning about the bombings in Brussels. And Paris was still fresh on everyone's mind. And Syria was getting really starting to heat up horribly all over the news. And that's in the documentary. Like I literally, Barry, would shoot the television and with one hand, I've got the camcorder and I've got the remote control in the other. So I could flip the channels at the same time and go from BBC World News to CNN to Al Jazeera to something in Arabic. I didn't even know what news channel it was, to kind of give the film context. So I would leave this film behind and go, this was spring of my life alone in a crazy part of the world at a crazy time.
Let me get all the information out there so I can make sure I can communicate this. When do you come to Detroit? What time, what place, and what's the charity, and what's kind of the entire spiel for the event?
I Am Battle Comic, a documentary about comedy, doing comedy for the troops in the Middle East, will be in Detroit, April 5th, 8 o'clock at the Main Art Theater. The Main Art is in Royal Oak. It's $15, and the entire tickets take at the door. All the ticket sales, 100%, go to militaryfamilies.org, and it's a great organization. They help out spouses of active duty that are away. They help out kids. They have a camp for kids that if they're having a hard time dealing with their parents being gone, or maybe their dad came back and has PTSD, and the kids are, they can go to this camp with other kids like that, and really they have therapy there. It's just wonderful. We're going to auction off some items I've had donated and give that money to charity. And I think we're going to have some surprise people come out. I'm going to be there. Slade Ham is one of the comedians I went on the trip with. He's flying in from Texas, where he lives, to do the Q&A. And I mentioned Tammy earlier. She's flying from New York to do the Q&A. So I think it's going to be a party.
Yeah, this sounds awesome. A little bit about commercialdirectingbootcamp.com.
It's a one-day intensive conversation about how the business works and the skills you need and the mindset. I only take 20 filmmakers, and we go it's a series of PowerPoints with examples of what to do, what not to do, what not to say on a conference call. But moreover, Barry, it's the mindset of just because you think you're hot stuff, Mr. or Mrs. Director on set, you still go home and kill that spider in the bathtub or make that grilled cheese. Like, I try to teach young filmmakers, like, it's not, especially in this day and age, with the proliferation of the tools and everything we started off talking about, it isn't like you make a couple commercials and you sell them to Colgate or Bud Light, and then now all of a sudden you're a superstar. Like, it is a career choice that takes work and dedication, and you have to study the craft of advertising as much as you have to study the craft of filmmaking, right? Like, you have to rise up. And if this can make you a little better, great.
I'm telling you right now, I'm interested. I love it. I love what you're saying. Number one, the giving back part, that I'm so on board with that. Number two, community and directors talking and being around each other. I hope someday I can make it to this. It sounds awesome. I feel like I would learn a ton from it. So cool. So I'm looking forward to putting that out there. I'm looking forward to putting out what you're doing in Detroit. I'm looking forward to meeting you. I think this is great. And,
likewise. We're gonna have a good time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
The last thing I'll tell you, first of all, I hope all your listeners, anyone you can tell, comes out to I Am Battle Comic. I mean, it was a labor of love, and I was like, I'm no Rockefeller, Barry, but I have a good life. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't have a good life if someone wasn't defending the freedom. It's hard to really directly go, because they're defending the American way, that I get to be a capitalist. I get to have a seminar, right, about teaching people about how to make a commercial. That's crazy. But I don't know any other country where you could do that, at least not as easily as here. So it's why I'm doing 7 different cities. It was 6, but Las Vegas, a charity in Las Vegas that brings therapy dogs to the military vets when they come back, if they have PTSD, and they give them these dogs. It's called For Vet's Sake. And they said, we want to do a screening. I said, you got the film for free. In fact, let's organize it. We'll get some press. Super Lounge, my company, we rented the theaters. We don't want the money. Let's just give it back to these people. Like, it almost would feel hypocritical to make money off of this, as opposed to use it for good.
Yeah,
And maybe I'm
awesome.
crazy. Maybe I'm crazy, but
No, I am all on board with the reason for living is giving, man. If you're giving back, you're thinking, you're not only of what you're doing is great, but you're also thinking from the place of abundance, and those things come around. You know what I mean?
But wait,
and so
wait, say that again. Say that again.
The reason for living is giving. You know, that's
The reason for living is giving. I love that one.
I stole that from Tony Robbins. I can't take credit for it, and who knows, he may have stole it too. But I love that line, and I do believe in it. I believe strongly in it. It means that you're coming from a place of abundance and not a place of scarcity. And you believe, and when you're in a place of abundance, good things come to you. You know what I mean?
Rising tides lift all ships.
That's it, brother.
Friends, family, followers, I ask you up front, what is your why? I personally was so excited when I heard Jordan came across the love and connection in his answer. One of the core pieces that makes us up as humans, and so much of what we do this work for, is the connection piece. As artists, I feel like we seek individuality. It's essential for us to separate ourselves from others and show what we have and why we're unique. But we can't forget the importance of doing that for the connection and the love that comes back to us. Hey, did you learn something new today? If so, share it, tell others, help me build this community. I'm Barry Walton. Until next time, keep doing what you love.